everyone sort of contributing to the conversation, as well as walking away feeling like there's something that we can do tonight.
I can't be long, I'm short. Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. And want to really thank my sister. I want to thank my sister for inviting us to this small gathering, just to really say farewell to Dr. Pheko. Dr. Pheko is not new in the struggle. He was the president of the Pan-Africanist Congress. He worked for 10 years as a member of parliament, and he was the president of the PAC, and he has written 20 books. But he also now in the Parliament of South Africa, and has written a book which is one of my favorite, which says, which says that these are the new things that are happening in South Africa. If you want to find out what is new in South Africa, you go to this book. But my favorite book is the one that he just published a month ago, which says the struggle of the new one, that where were these people in jail? The history of Robben Island should be preserved. And in that book, he illustrates exactly the beginning of Robben Island and who was in Robben Island and how long they were in Robben Island. And with that book, you really never be concerned about who really wants the land. I'll let Dr. Pheko explain to us why it is important that we have to be Pan-Africanists, because he's one of the stalwarts of Pan-Africanism in Tanzania. Thank you.
I don't know if I can be heard. I don't know if I can be heard. I am going to be very informal. And first of all, I want to say, who are we? Who are we? Talking about people with a dark skin. I'm saying, who are we? Who are we? Where have we been? Where have we been? Where are we now? Historically, who are we? Where have we been? Where are we now? Today, the 4th of June, 2011. What do we want to be? What do we want to be? Where are we headed for? Any problem? Any problem?
We're trying to get rid of the buzz. Can you project?
Can
you speak loud without the mic? No, without the mic. Can you speak without this? People can hear you.
We're not going to be able to hear what the business going on behind us.
We have very few here. So I think
down to the front.
Huh?
We all move down to the front.
Yeah, we have very few here, so I'm sure we can do without the mic.
Move down to the front.
Thank you.
I ask those questions because as African people, whatever we call ourselves, we need to know where we came from. My understanding is that we all come from Africa. And my understanding is that Africa was not always so-called third world. Africa gave the world a civilization. And Africa had the first renaissance on this planet. But I think we must understand what then happened to us. Because what happened to Africa happened to us. It happened to our ancestors. Now I start by the fact that there was what was called the transatlantic slave trade, which traded people, which sold people like cargo. And that is when Africa began to decline. And then of course after that, you remember, there was the Berlin Conference where Africa itself was divided into a number of countries among European countries, and there was really nothing left for Africa. And the resources of Africa were being used by foreigners. And today they call themselves developed countries and unaware, maybe deliberate, that all the development that has taken place in Europe, in the United States, anywhere else, it was as a result of that slave trade, as well as a result of colonialism in Africa. So sometimes we look down on ourselves. That is why sometimes I talk a lot about history, to show that we were the first people who enlightened this world. Our ancestors were the people who enlightened this world. But actually, in this generation, and then maybe in the few past generation, we always behave as if, no, we are inferior to other people. We never achieved anything. And in fact, they say we never achieved anything. They always say we never invented the wheel, as if the wheel is the only thing that should have been invented. And I can tell you that if we had time, I will tell you exactly who invented the wheel. Because the wheel was known among the African people. And you'll find that the people in ancient Egypt knew everything about that wheel that they are boasting about. But I don't want to go into that now. But I simply say, knowing where we are now, and maybe realizing a little bit of what we were before, I think that our agenda should be how to get where we were once. We were once a power. We were once ahead of the whole world. Some historians call Africa the mother of nations. And it is absolutely indisputable that anybody in this world who is knowledgeable at all can never speak about civilization without reference to the African people. But maybe that becomes a little bit monotonous. But when you take our labor part apart from our civilization, I was talking about the development of the European countries, including America. It would not have been what it is today had our labor not come here. But we have not benefited from that labor. They have benefited, and they are looking down on us, and they are saying that, well, maybe we are just lazy, and that is why we are not where we should be. And I should say, I think the 21st century, the century where we should come up with an agenda to go back where we were. To go back where we were. We are not that world. We are not that world. We are first world. We were always there, and we must go back there. Now, how do we go back there? We need to have an agenda. And if you look at the political history of our people, you find that around 1900, they had some of our people here in the diaspora, like Sylvester Williams and many others, Marcus Garvey, and the people who realize that we cannot go where we once were unless we have something, a vehicle that will get us there. And the vehicle that is going to get us there is to understand that we are one. We can debate that if you want, but we are one. I realized or noticed that when we were enslaved, some people sat down and decided and planned exactly how that was going to be. And they were together. And when they were going to colonize Africa and partition it among themselves so that it benefits them, they were together. When they realized that colonialism was being challenged seriously and it was not going to work, they were together to bring about what we call a neo-colonial situation today. We are the only people in the world who do not work together. And for as long as we don't work together, we'll always have problems. And I want to say that we have been given a philosophy which is called Pan-Africanism, which means that the African people must unite. The African people must do things together. And I want to point out that we have just come from a liberation, a political liberation of Africa. Angola, in particular, Zimbabwe, which was Rhodesia, South Africa, Azania, Namibia, Southwest Africa. And the people here in the diaspora were involved. We had begun to work together. The OAU had a liberation committee. They were giving our freedom fighters guns to go and fight. I don't think that what we call South Africa today would have been liberated if the African people throughout the world did not make whatever contribution they could make. And I'm saying this because I was here in the United Nations as a representative of the people who were the victims of apartheid and colonialism. And I know just how much contribution was made by our people in the diaspora and also in Africa, in other parts of Africa. Nigeria never said, well, those people in Rhodesia, those people in South Africa, those people in Southwest Africa, those people in Angola, those people in Mozambique, it's their own endeavor. But you know, when Ghana became independent, Nkrumah said, Ghana's independence is meaningless unless it takes into consideration the total liberation of Africa. And he called that very first conference in April 1958, and there were only 8 states. And these are the states that came together to begin to work together right up to May 1963, when the OAU was formed. The OAU may not have been very effective, but it was better than nothing because we are where we are today because of what they did. And I don't want to go into why OAU was not as effective, but maybe just to say that, remember that the OAU, when it was formed, there was the Casablanca group, there was the Monrovia group. The Monrovia group had been heavily financed by the United States of America to derail the very formation of the OAU, so that there was nothing like the OAU. Because they delight in our divisions, they delight in our disunity, because they know that for as long as we are divided and not united, we are not going to go anywhere. But I'm trying to say here that Africa as a continent took responsibility to liberate the whole of Africa, because they knew that if they don't do that, sooner or later they might be recolonized. And then, of course, as I've already indicated, here in the United States and in the diaspora, our people have made a very rich contribution to that liberation struggle. But I want to say to you today, as I've already indicated, political liberation, or shall I say Political freedom without economic power is a gigantic colonial fraud. And this is exactly what has happened in many African countries. We've got the flag, we've got the parliament, we've got presidents, we've got national anthem, but the gold, the diamonds, the riches, the fertile land, it is still in the hands of those people. Because colonialism dispossesses the indigenous people. It dispossesses people. And when they come and say they are negotiating, they gave you things you never asked for. You see, we have fought wars of national resistance in Africa against colonialism. And they were over land, because land has gold, has platinum, has oil, has got all the minerals. And that's where we get our food. That's where we get our water. That's where we get our houses. In fact, land is money and power. Without land, you cannot even have sovereignty. Even for a nation to be a nation, it must have land. The kings of Africa could not be kings. What distinguished a king from common people was that a king had land. And therefore, what distinguishes a nation to be a real nation? It is when a nation controls its resources, it has land. But that is not happening. And that's where we are. This is the 21st century. I've indicated that our people fought for political freedom. We have today the burden of fighting for economic liberation. Without this economic liberation, we are just slaves. Because people come there and take whatever they like from what is actually our own. So I'm going to make just these remarks, and then perhaps we can discuss a lot of other things. I want to point out to you one small little thing that I think you should be aware of before I sit down. In South Africa, I've got a copy of the Constitution here. And I want everybody to be familiar with Section 25, Paragraph 7 of that Constitution. Because the South African Constitution is promoted in the world as the best constitution. And I'm saying that it is the worst constitution. Because it did not give the people what the people wanted. We never went to jail or to exile or died in the battlefield for a piece of cloth called the flag. We never did these things. We never died in the battlefield for something called the national anthem, or something called a parliament, or because we wanted to be presidents. Our wars of national resistance, which were watered with our blood, was about the land and its resources. And we haven't received those resources. Okay, now, Section 25, Paragraph 7 of the Constitution of South Africa. Let me explain. There was a law when the colonialists were consolidating their colonialism. There was a law called the Native Land Act of 1913. That Native Land of 1913 gave the majority African population 13% of the land, and there were 80%. 13% of the land was given to the indigenous 80% majority population. When there was negotiation, nothing was said about the land. All that was said was that people who had land before 1913 will have that land. So if the African people had 13%, they will have to do with that 13%. And that is the case now. 13%. If you go to South Africa today, I know people are told a lot of stories in the media, but that's not what you're going to find. Go and see where the people live. The ones that we said were liberated. They cannot get jobs. They have no place to sleep. And these are the things that are the result of the failure of properly decolonizing the country and making sure that people get what they fought for, not what they did not fight for. So in a nutshell, I simply want to say that this is the program, this is where we are, and we believe that we must also do the same things. We must unite in these matters of liberation and see how best we can come out of this, because surely economic liberation is the thing of now. I want also to emphasize, of course, maybe a little, say that it is also very important for us to realize that we need massive education, massive education, massive education. When I talk about massive education, I'm not talking just about academic education. I'm not just talking about degrees. I'm talking about all kinds of skills. Carpentry is a skill, plumbing is a skill, electricity is a skill. There are a lot of other things that are a skill. So that a country, a nation becomes self-reliant. But most importantly, we need to acquire technology. And the technology I'm talking about has relevance to raw materials that we have in Africa. We have diamonds, we have gold, we've got uranium, we've got cobalt, we've got tantalum. There's nothing you cannot find there. And then you go to the products, that cocoa there in Ghana, that coffee there in Ivory Coast, those riches that people are fighting for up to this minute in the Republic of Congo. And everybody who is rich today, who is rich, I don't care, he may be in Europe, he may be here in the United States, everybody knows he who owes or she owes or they owe their wealth from Africa. And Africa is sitting in poverty there. Why? Because what we need is, what they are doing is to take our diamonds, go and process them in Switzerland, take our cocoa, go and process it as chocolate, and bring it back to us for 200,000%. We should be in a position where we process our products and we send them out as finished products. That is the only way we can control our economy, raise up the standard of living of our own people, and share our own wealth and our own riches with those that have stood with us during the darkest time in the struggle. I really think that is all I want to say. I really think that's all I want to say.
Entertain some questions and comments, but I wanted to
Turn around. Turn around. The water. Can you give him the water? On the. Thank you. Oh, yeah, that's good.
Well, we get to dialogue, so whether people have responses. But I want to take the topic of asking the first one. I guess it might have been, I think you were getting ready to refer to something in the present Constitution when you started talking about the Land Act. What you said the present Constitution is a problem and didn't bring the flag and everything, but you were stipulating an article in the Constitution. I don't know if you got completed that. Yeah.
Section 25.
What was it about that you wanted to say about that?
In 1913, when the guns became silent and African and the guns had triumphed over the spear, the Africans were given this 13% of the land.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. You said that. I thought you meant
They were given this 13% of the land through the native land of 1913. So when they came to negotiate freedom, independence, they were told, according to the Constitution here, you can read it for yourself and read it perhaps, because it clearly says that you cannot claim land that was taken from you on the 19th of June, before the 19th of June 1930. Which means that those who had less land in 1930, they'll have to keep that less land. Those who had more land in 1930, they'll keep that land. So the land today is with the white minority population. And we have that 18%. I hope that is clear. And this is in the Constitution.
you want me to read it?
Up to you.
Oh, no. Did anybody else have any questions or comments?
Yeah, first of all, good evening. My name is Asantwa. I want to thank Dr. Pheko and the PAC for your 30 years of hard work over the years. I first want to give tribute to Mama Albertina Sassoon, who joined the ancestors a few days ago. And she was welcomed by ancestors with open arms. Dr. Pheko, since you are now a member of Parliament, taking for example how HIV/AIDS is rampant in South Africa, what type of legislation or initiatives are currently pending in the Parliament of South Africa to help eradicate HIV/AIDS in South Africa? And also, what type of legislation or initiatives are you debating or whatever regarding violence against women, which ties in directly to the spread of HIV/AIDS?
First of all, I'm a former member of Parliament. I left Parliament about a year ago. I have been in Parliament for 10 years. There is no particular legislation appropriate, but the government of the day, now that we think again against the House of Well, to provide the government of the day does everything to provide medicine, but there is no legislation. I think that's all I want to say.
And anything about violence against women? Violence against women and girls?
Violence
against women and girls.
Any legislation pending, or any initiatives pending, or debated?
There is legislation on violence against women. Every year allows some jury system and that whole part is dedicated to making this problem of violence for women not conscious that we don't deal with things very well.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. You had a
Greetings. My name is Amir with the organization Black Nation, Nation Islam. Most of you in town, I'm not sure how long you've been in the area, but I'd like to do the interview with you in conjunction with the AAPRP. And I want to thank Sister Ajiba for bringing this meeting to my attention and the wonderful meeting with 4 meetings. But my concern, one part is dealing with the land issue. What percentage do these Caucasians, white, or I consider the trash and scum of the earth, what percentage of the land they occupy today, and what percentage of the land we occupy, as opposed to around 1913, and what basically economic system or what economic system what economic system is in existence in the country to further the goals and our aspirations, and what is the position, another question, what is the country's position on the United States of Africa and the African unity, and its position on Muammar Gaddafi and his stand on South Africa. As well. So it's a few, but I kind of put it all in there.
But thank you.
The colonial system, economic system, and even capitalist system. And if I can elaborate, there's virtually two nations in the country. One extremely rich and white, and the minority, and one extremely poor and black, and the minority. That's what the situation is economically. With regards to land, the African people were allocated 13% in 1913. They still have that 1913, that 13%. One of the reasons I said that the Constitution must not be read here, because I'm not here to spread propaganda. A copy of the Constitution is here, Section 25, Paragraph 7, clearly says that no land that was taken before June 1930 may be given away. So the whites had 87% in 1930, and the Africans had 13% in 1930. So they keep the 13%, and the whites keep 87%. And 87% of course means all the minerals are there, all the wealth is there. The 13% that was located in the African people it's not even the best land. It's rocky, sandy, there's nothing in it. But the reserve, this 13% was called reserves. The reserve was so that Africans will starve to death in the reserves if they don't go to the cities to work in the gold mines for somebody else, the diamonds for somebody else, platinum for somebody else, for the farms for somebody else. They have no land where they can say they are working for themselves. Now, the United States of Africa was never the project or policy of the present government. In fact, Pan-Africanism in that country used to be called by some of the rulers today as racist. So Pan-Africanism was never their base. When Libya was attacked, I myself wrote it up, condemning. Everybody was silent. It took 5 days for the youth of the ruling party to say this is wrong. Nobody had pronounced it. And you'll appreciate that we have a seat here in the United Nations, in the Security Council. And our country voted that what the Americans, the British, and others proposed must go and be done. They did not even pretend to, what
do you call it now? What do you call that thing now? When you don't go there or abstain. They did not even pretend to abstain. They took a clear position that yes, this must be done. I condemn that myself in my own heart. And I know that many people do not go along with it. But I'm sure you've also realized, you've also observed that everybody should see that you are. The thing is, after Gaddafi, then who else is there? Because we know from history that they get you one by one until we are all gone. And the best thing is always that when they take one of us, we rally around that one. And in fact, we have been defeated because we have been taken one by one. We think it is not my war, it's not my battle. But at the end of the day, it will be your battle. And there will be nobody to come and help. I think that your questions are answered.
Dr. Pheko, I was wondering if you could, on that note, share now what is your position on Zimbabwe? Because Zimbabwe in certain ways fits that same situation.
A man called Cecil Rhodes, many years ago, he went first to what is called South Africa. And then he went to Rhodesia. Well, it was not Rhodesia, Zimbabwe. And then of course it was colonized. Rhodesia was colonized. And they released all the criminals in their jails in Britain and promised them to go to Rhodesia where they would have farms and also the possibility of having gold mines there. That they did. And independence, when Mugabe got to the power, I think it's about 400 or 4,000 white farmers. There were only 12 million hectares of land for farming. Well, I won't give the details of why Mugabe did not do that at that time and so on. But I simply want to say that the land was simply not in the hands of the people. Again, they had got the flag, they had got the flag, they had got parliament, they had got the president, and there was no economic power. So what Mugabe is, and I've written several articles, and I've raised this issue, and I've stood in parliament for this issue. I have said that what Mugabe is doing is what all presidents in Africa, in Kenya, in Namibia, and many other places ought to be doing. Mugabe is doing the right thing, not because it's Mugabe. Point is that we cannot have a situation where you fought for your freedom and they should never tell these guys, look, give me a flag, give me a color, give me a president. They know the wars of national resistance about the land. But when you negotiate with them, they pretend they don't know. They give you the things you want. What we want is land. What we want is gold. Where we are now is we must control the resources of Africa. They are ours. They belong to us.
I'm going to go with that. I do think that I'm just going to say that because of the nature of how contentious that issue has been here, knowing some of the things, even when the article that you wrote, that for people to know them in terms of Mozambique and the liberation struggle in South Africa, asking Pheko and Danu to reconsider because they were about to walk out of the Lancaster House of Courts. And so they were asked to reconsider by the frontline states. There's a whole host of reasons that people don't know about and are using now to opt with imperialism's position against Zimbabwe. Say, well, they should have given, but people need to know there's more complicated than put in your article. But I want to let him go, and then we'll go to you. How's that? If you wanted to, there's something that we were talking about just now?
Yeah. Oh my God. Then he said, didn't bother, that's a promise that silver helping get the land for the whites.
British promised them they would fund They
buy the land.
They buy the land from the white farmers and
Yeah.
compensate the white farmers for the turning of the land, and they reneged on that
And
promise.
she reneged on the promise. So then he took it.
Right.
Oh, now look. She said to him that she was appointed the money to buy the land from the white farmer and give it to the God. That was the sign of agreement. Yeah. That's crazy.
My name is Emmett Nabaki Doe, and I wanted to speak to the question of economics, but before I do that, I have to speak against the repeated attack on males. This bullshit about AIDS being associated with violence against men is nonsense. Violence against women is nonsense. And we have to understand that this whole business around AIDS is a hoax. There is no such thing as AIDS. AIDS does not exist. It is definitely something that is killing black people. But there's no such thing as AIDS, and there never has been anything called AIDS. But they've got a bunch of people who are AIDS pimps, who are getting paid, and who are making money from promoting this nonsense of something that does not exist. We need to do the research. We need to go online and begin to educate ourselves, because the knowledge is there about the AIDS hoax. And we must stop being fooled and allow this nonsense to continue about associating black men with violence against women. Black men have never historically been violent against women.
Are you kidding me?
Most of the violence perpetrated in the black family has been perpetrated by women against male children and against children. We have to be honest.
Okay, Africans, come on. This is not what we're here for.
Straight and set the record straight. The violence which occurs in the black home, the number one purveyor of violence in the black home is female. And we need to deal with that, and we also need to deal with the consequence. But we must not be silent around this nonsense called AIDS.
We're not having a conversation. We are not.
We don't want to get sidetracked.
But we don't want to lie to walk around on the floor either.
But we don't. That's
Those
true.
lies.
But Africans.
Is that after we get to, maybe in another circles after the
I
program,
just
because
invite
it
you
would
to
be
Google it.
disrespectful.
You don't have to.
Africans, excuse me, Africans.
And respect to Dr. Brett Pheko.
I'm hollering at everybody. We're trying to respect this African who came here to speak. That's what I'm hollering at. Go ahead, brother.
Now, the last thing I want to say about the economic situation. We as a people must address the economic circumstances which we cooperate. We cooperate with our enemies when we do not exercise and implement programs to speak to the economic dilemma of our people. Our people are systematically denied economics. I understand what he's talking about. And I also understand that we have solutions. The Economic Development Plan of 1993 is a solution. And you can see this plan at www.edcu.inc.com. It is the Community Economic Development Plan of 1993. It is something that you need to educate yourself about, because it's a plan that we must use to implement to correct the problem of each college graduate class graduating with no opportunity, no future, but a debt. And we need to understand we have to stop cooperating with our own enemies.
I think first, so let before you
Yes, my name is Pheko, and I come from Germany, and I'm very happy to be such a cycle to achieve brothers and sisters. I think as a brother, I have to make a point, about what my fellow brother just said, and reacting to what my sister Asante was saying. I think that's the very kind of issue we must avoid, that trying to point point at a specific group within the community as being so-called responsible, of an oath that is undermining our people, undermining our unity, weakening our struggle. Both of us, male and female, men and women, we have, our share of responsibility. But we all also know the historic condition under which these came to happen between us and among us. The brother is right, that is not an African tradition, domestic violence. Neither that of the men toward the women, neither that of the women toward the men, or neither both of them toward the children. It is not our tradition. It's part of all this process of alienation, domination, oppression, enslavement. That's the issue. But we also need to understand we cannot address it unless we together, deal with it instead of pinpointing at each other, and fighting each other over this kind of problem. So, I would really appeal to all of us, not to lose this focus, and to refocus, on genuine issues, the kind of what the brother Pheko has expressed here. I'm very thankful that you went this long way to come and inform, educate us about what's going on, in Tanzania. Because when all these things happen there, many all over the continent and the diaspora were enjoying, were happy, and you, the PAC, you were the people to warn us about what were going on there. But unfortunately, not so many here listened to you. And now today, we see our people paying the highest price in Tanzania. And not only our people there, other Africans coming to Tanzania, they are not identified as the enemies by their own people, while the very enemy is there sitting, enjoying, playing us against each other. And this is a terrible situation, and we are so glad that people like you who have been, uncompromising, in articulating the reality, educating the people, and fighting for it. And make no mistake, and be confident that one day or the other, this truth that you people epitomize and body, it will triumph, it will conquer, and Africa will be free. Thank you, brother.
Yes, I just wanted to know, what are Africans on the continent, and what can Africans in the diaspora do to help Africans gain control of their natural resources? And what do you think about China's growing influence on the African continent in terms of doing business?
That's a good question.
What do I think about China going to Africa on their own basis? That's the question. Well, I think that trade is trade. I cannot say that the Chinese should come to Africa as messiahs. And I must say that, yes, there's a need in Africa to diversify our economy in the sense that, well, when you export to the Western countries, you know what happens. And also you know what happens when they deal with fuel. They normally look at their own side and not that of the African continent. But that does not mean to say that we should close our eyes to the fact that the Chinese are also just human beings. They've got their own interests. So far, if they want to be our friends, we accept it. But we know that there are people who have been our friends before, and later on they tend to use the store. I think that it is important for us as Africans, whoever we deal with, we must not be naive. Nations have got interests. We have interests. We must protect our interests because they also protect their interests. I don't know whether I'm answering your question there, but I'm saying this because some people simply feel like, okay, now the Chinese, but you must understand, the Chinese are over a billion. And I think that when a nation has got a lot of people will come, it also will be looking at the place where it will be done. So Africa certainly must be careful that it is not taken for granted. The other question was,
what are Africans on the continent doing to gain control of their natural resources, and what can Africans in the diaspora do to help them get control of those natural resources?
I've already pointed out that it is very, very important for our people in the diaspora. They have skills. They have had an advantage of education, better than their brothers perhaps there in Africa. So it is critical that the skills like there is also that everybody is investing. And I think that those Africans in the diaspora who have money, we must also go and invest there. I think that there is a sort of okay now, that country is free now, it's an African country. But then the whites go in there and do whatever they like. And our people don't seem to understand that they also have to be aggressive and go in there and be there. Otherwise what happens is, the skills that I'm talking about, when you don't have those skills, we go to Germany, we go to France, we go to England, and they come and do exactly what they were doing during colonial days. I think that we are inclined to think that our people here understand that their future coincides, or shall I say, it's more or less the same as our future. If you succeed, we succeed. If we are succeeding that side, if we succeed, you succeed, etc., etc. So really, in a nutshell, I'm saying that I think we have to work. One example I want to give, and I always want to repeat, is I have said this is the struggle for economic liberation. In the past, we didn't have the struggle for political freedom. And I've said that we had pioneers in the diaspora, Boy, Makugabi, and other people who contributed very much to the struggle in Africa. And therefore, today, because we are working for economic liberation, we should have an agenda. We should have an agenda. Our people must have an agenda for economic liberation. It is not the first time that we are trying to liberate. Already the diaspora people have been involved in the liberation of Africa. But that was a political struggle. That was supposed to be a means to an end instead of being an end in itself. So what I'm saying here is that another thing that I think we should do, we are not very connected. Africa, in my opinion, is not very connected with the diaspora. The diaspora is not very connected. I think there should be an agenda that brings us together. I don't know whether things like the internet, somebody studying a newsletter or something, I don't know exactly what must be done. But I think that we must be connected. Because if we succeed in Africa, you'll succeed. If we are failing, everybody else is going to fail. And I can tell you, until Africa is respected, there's no black person who is going to be respected in the world.
Well, he actually, this question was actually parallel to mine. So thank you for your response. And it wasn't, the particular question I had was in reference to the control of our resources and how we can get involved. But just to add to it, I know that you mentioned us taking our education and our resources to Africa and investing in Africa, and you also gave some examples. Sometimes it's challenging because we can look, well, I know myself, I can look at the larger picture, but then my question is, well, how exactly do I move forward next month? Like, what are some small, like what's the short-term goal that will eventually lead to us achieving that long-term goal? Do you have any like specific examples on how we could move forward and how we could even introduce our young people and our family members to do the same thing, to replicate the same thing so that we can, like when we introduce it to other people, they'll be able to digest it and we'll be more effective at achieving our goal. Any specific short-term examples?
I
don't know whether it's short or long, but I've already said it in other meetings. But I think one of the things we should do in the diaspora is to form an association of skills. And let those skills be known. Let this thing be an association. And I think that this must be fair to the African governments. There are progressive governments that I think will be wanting to use our people here instead of using people from Europe. But it must be an association. I think when it is association, it is easier to speak to a government because you speak not as an individual, you are speaking as an association. And then of course also you speak to other people inside the country that are progressive, that are sharing your own view, and they are able to talk to these guys if they drag their feet. You talk to them well, something goes wrong, say now in a hospital people die because they are not doctors. Then you go to the media and say that, but there is an association, whatever, United States, Jamaica, and these people could be helping us here. But you are making things difficult for them to come here. So that we all take responsibility. And then the whole question of information. When you have been ill-treated, when something has gone wrong, there should also be people inside the country who will know about this and take it up themselves on your behalf. This is how I look at it.
I got a couple of questions about that. I don't see any more hands. Are there any more hands? Okay. Dr. Pheko, if you could talk about this on the radio a little bit more, or maybe it'd be good to talk about the situation of political prisoners in South Africa, Tanzania. And also, I have a question about, there's sort of a new, I don't know how new it is anymore, but there's a phenomenon of non-governmental organizations, especially our youth, who are joining these organizations that have nothing but a liberal or even capitalist frame of mind. They often, if they're political, fight for very what can be described as ambiguous definitions of human rights and all these kind of things. And they often are used a lot of times organizations to attack the rest of governments and do things. And just to me, what I see is create a different state on the ground in Africa. A lot of our youth are joining these organizations. They graduated from college, doing what you're saying, telling them to do, acquiring skills, and then they think how to do what you're saying. They think they join some of these NGOs. Do you have a take? Because I know you have the analysis on the NGO situation in Africa, and then talk about the political.
Well, in the case of Zimbabwe, we know that there have been NGOs that were financed not to really do what the NGO should do in the country, but to undermine the government that they do not like. So it becomes a very difficult question because we don't know where the people who are behind these NGOs come from. But I think that is another thing that people must realize. Because most of the people come from outside, and they have been NGOs. And certainly the interpretation of human rights is not the same as ours when we deal with the realism of this. And that is all as far as that is concerned. Now let me come to the question of political prisoners. We do have political prisoners. We have had political prisoners from the days of the Mandela government. Nothing that has pained me more in that country than to see people behind bars who are freedom fighters. I was here in the United and one of my responsibilities was to call for the release of all political prisoners. And Mr. Mandela is one of those that I said, but the release was among those that I said. But I don't understand how it's open. I must point out to you that there is what they call the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission called the perpetrators of apartheid to the table, and they called the freedom fighters to the table to come and justify what why they got involved, why there was killing, why they were in the I want to point out that the International Convention on the Suppression and Punishment of Apartheid, through that convention, the United Nations led apartheid a crime against humanity. So all that these people did was to fight a crime against apartheid. So it is really illegal that they should be behind the bars. I have written a letter to Pheko and Zuma, and anybody who would like to have it would be very happy if you can have that long letter, because we think that it was time now that the matter is raised with the Human Rights Commission at the United Nations in Geneva. So also the media people, I think that it is high time that if they want to question the president there or the South African government about it, something that was fairly documented, and it is not something I'm saying behind anybody's back. That letter was meant for President Zuma and he hasn't. So I don't know what else I can say, but I'm very concerned about those people because they are young people, and you have leaders today who are having big monies. Now they've forgotten that before they could have the big monies, before they could be made stars, young people were fighting for their guns. They were dying. And today when you have it nice, they are totally forgotten. Nobody talks about it. The only one where they're talking about those, or the PSC, the only one, only organization that they're talking about this. Because we feel it isn't just.
Any other further questions or comments? Dr. Pheko?
Or someone else already spoke?
No one else is raising their hand, so you and then the brother.
Dr. Pheko, if you could please, to go back to what this brother here is saying, I make no apology for my politics.
Come and say something.
Let me finish, Amir. Amir. Then let somebody else who's in charge of this program check me, not you. Just so we clear. Now, Dr. Pheko, to go back to what I'm trying to say before I get cut off here. I think we need to deal very carefully with what I raised earlier about violence against women and HIV and AIDS. All right? Now, I work in the field of domestic violence here in D.C., and I've seen the relationships close up. I've also lost friends, male and female, due to HIV, AIDS, and domestic violence and so forth. And I'm periodically in contact with people on the continent of Africa who deal with these issues as well, so it's very real. But if you can briefly talk about some specific things that the South African government is doing to try to respond to HIV and AIDS. I've read about some things from time to time, and if you know particular programs or particular women's groups that are dealing with this issue, grassroots are dealing with this issue in South Africa, I think that would be very helpful. Thank you.
I think I've indicated that South African government is doing something about it. Whether it exists or not, they're doing something about it. The organization.
Speak a lot, sir. Speak a lot.
I am saying that something is being done about AIDS. Now, this is whether people believe it or not. I'm not a doctor. Anyway, something is being done about it. I don't know what it's better to say, but it's a program to help people in that sort of what else is it?
Do we know the name of the program? We can look it up with some research on it.
You can probably look it up without him telling you the name.
The health department is dealing with it. This is under the Department of Health, not the ministry. So it's the Ministry of Health, the Minister of Health. That's his ministry. That deals with all diseases, including this one.
answer her question.